I was 2 sips into my lukewarm coffee when it arrived. Subject: immediate termination of employment. At first, I assumed it was spam, a phishing scam, or a poorly timed HR system glitch. But the email came from the official company address, with my full name typed out in chilling, bureaucratic precision. Rachel A. Monroe. Termination effective immediately. My stomach dropped. I reread the message 3 times, trying to make sense of the language. No explanation, no rationale. Just a cold, sterile list of revoked credentials and instructions to collect personal belongings by 5 p.m. escorted by security. My badge would be deactivated within the hour. Per internal review, it said, your services are no longer required. Internal review? There was no internal review, not unless someone had staged one behind my back. The open office hummed on around me, oblivious. I sat frozen, mouse still in hand, blinking at the screen while the weight of what had just happened slammed into me like a truck. I'd been fired, just like that. No meeting, no warning, not even a courtesy call from the CEO. I stood up slowly, legs wobbling, and made my way to HR. Our people operations coordinator, a fresh-out-of-college intern named Mia, barely looked up from her laptop when I walked in. "I got an email," I said, voice thin. "It says I've been terminated. Can you check?" She blinked, then clicked a few keys. Her face didn't change. "It's in the system," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, Rachel. Can you tell me why?" She shook her head with a helpless shrug. "All I know is the executive signature's pending. But the directive came from admin. I'm not authorized to, I can't comment." Admin. There was only one person who could pull strings like this while the CEO was away. Erica, our chief administrative officer. Technically a glorified secretary, but unofficially, she ran the place like her own kingdom the moment leadership left the building. She had a sharp bob, sharper tongue, and an uncanny ability to be just helpful enough while undermining you at every turn. And she hated me. Not openly? That would have been too messy. No, Erica specialized in the death by 1,000 paper cuts, blocking calendar invites, leaving me off email threads. Accidentally swapping out my name for hers on project proposals. And now this? This wasn't a mistake. This was personal. I stumbled back to my desk, heart pounding in my throat. Around me, the office buzzed on, oblivious. No one had noticed yet. A few coworkers glanced up as I passed, then looked quickly away. Of course they did. When you've been marked as terminated, people treat you like a contagion. I started gathering my things: photos, a plant, the ceramic mug from our offsite in Napa, the keyboard I'd bought with my own money, the notepad with color-coded action plans for a campaign I would now never launch. I'd built this role from scratch, given them 3 years of 18-hour days, late-night pitch decks, and hand-holding junior staff. I'd pulled us out of a messy acquisition and revamped the entire operations dashboard. I'd kept this place standing when others had burned out and walked away, and now I was being erased. Just like that. I passed by Erica's office on the way out. She was inside, naturally, sitting behind her glass desk with an espresso in hand, her perfectly neutral lipstick barely cracking into a smile as our eyes met. She knew I'd seen the email. She wanted me to. Her smirk didn't break as she lifted her cup in a little mock toast gesture. I clenched my jaw and kept walking. Outside, the air felt too sharp, too loud. I blinked against the afternoon sun as if I'd just stepped off a roller coaster. My phone buzzed. 3 notifications. Coworkers whisper texting. One said, "I just heard WTH?" Another, "Are you okay?" Erica said it was a restructuring. Restructuring. That word weaponized like a scalpel. A clean cut to sever anything inconvenient. Our CEO, Daniel, Had left for Santorini 4 days ago, a digital detox trip with no email access. I knew he'd never have signed off on this. Not like this. But that's the thing about power vacuums. People like Erica rush in to fill them. I stood frozen on the curb, my box of office things pressed against my chest like a shield, trying to make sense of it all. No warning, no severance meeting, no due process, just a silent coup. Can you imagine giving years of your life to something, only to be pushed out like a defective product the moment you're inconvenient? I didn't cry. Not yet, but something inside me cracked open. Not grief, not panic, something harder. Hotter. The next morning, I woke up in my modest one-bedroom apartment surrounded by half-unpacked boxes from the office. The silence felt different now. Not empty, watchful. I made coffee and sat cross-legged on my living room rug, flipping through old file folders. And that's when I found it. Page 8. A sentence buried in legalese. One clause. One signature. One line I hadn't paid attention to in years, but now it read like prophecy. And for the first time in 24 hours, I smiled. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't leave the rug for hours. The contract lay open in front of me, its crisp legal pages still neatly folded at the corners, exactly how my uncle had left it when we signed everything that first week. I'd always meant to reread it more carefully, but like most of us, I only skimmed at the time, too eager to start, too naive to imagine needing armor. Uncle Robert had insisted on reviewing every detail. "They're not going to protect you, Rachel," he'd said over lunch at that cramped little cafe across from the courthouse. "So you'd better make sure your contract does." I remember rolling my eyes, half laughing. I'm a department head, not a whistleblower. He didn't laugh. He just pulled out a pen and wrote something in the margin of the draft. I was looking at that note now. Page 8. Circle this. Trust me. I turned the page slowly. There it was. Section 4. 2B. Small font, dense wording. My eyes scanned it, then went back. Read it again. And again. Termination is contingent upon direct executive review and formal countersignature from the acting CEO or appointed fiduciary per operational autonomy clause filed on date of hire. I read it out loud, mouthing each word like it might disappear if I didn't anchor it in the room. What it meant, if I was understanding correctly, was this: they couldn't fire me, not without Daniel's signature. And Daniel was somewhere on a beach in Santorini, sipping wine and scrolling through outdated ebooks, completely unaware that the woman who'd kept his company running had just been tossed out like yesterday's news. I let out a slow breath and sat back, letting the weight of it sink in. Erica didn't know about this clause. She couldn't have. No one in admin had reason to comb through a mid-level director's onboarding paperwork from 3 years ago. Especially not a clause buried under legal strategy my uncle had quietly slipped in under a limited operational veto provision. And if she had known, she wouldn't have dared try this stunt. She was calculated, not reckless. Her power only extended as far as other people's ignorance. But I wasn't ignorant anymore. I leaned over and pulled out the rest of the folder: offer letters, policy memos, the original onboarding handbook. Tucked in the back was a faded blue post-it with my uncle's handwriting on it. "Call me if they ever try anything funny. He died a year after I took the job. Pancreatic cancer. Fast, merciless." I hadn't thought about that note in ages. I pressed it flat against the table and whispered, "You brilliant old fox." The apartment around me felt different now. Warmer. The same beige walls, the same flickering light above the kitchen. But something had shifted. I wasn't a cast-off licking her wounds. I was a woman with a loaded clause and nothing left to lose. The timing was too perfect. Daniel being out of reach. HR pretending their hands were tied. Erica moving like she had the final word. She thought I'd just go quietly, She thought I was soft. I laughed then, just once. Low and bitter. But it felt good, felt earned. On the coffee table, my phone buzzed with another text. This one from Lisa, in marketing. I don't understand. You were just in the exec sync on Monday. They didn't even mention restructuring. No, because there wasn't one. I typed back. It's complicated, but I'll explain soon. Then I reached for the yellow legal pad I always kept by the couch, tore off a fresh page, and wrote one word at the top: reinstatement. Below it, I began sketching out my next moves: contacts, timestamps, copies I'd need to request. My handwriting started shaky, then steadied as the plan took shape. But before anything else, I needed confirmation. If I was wrong, if I misunderstood that clause, I'd risk looking not just desperate, but delusional. But if I was right? This wasn't a setback. It was a beginning. The elevator groaned like it resented the weight of memory. 3rd floor. Franklin and Chase LLP. The frosted glass door still had the same gold lettering from years ago, chipped at the edges. I hadn't been here since Uncle Robert's funeral. Even then, I hadn't gone past reception. I wasn't ready. That office had been his fortress of logic and contracts. The scent of old paper and black coffee still clung to the air like incense in a chapel. Now, I needed someone who remembered his work. I stepped up to the front desk, nerves humming low beneath my ribs. Hi! I'm looking for someone who worked with Robert Monroe on corporate contracts, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm his niece. I just need someone to look over a clause he added to my employment agreement a few years ago. The receptionist blinked, then offered a tight smile. Robert Monroe, she repeated softly, like the name carried weight. You're Rachel? I nodded. She gestured to a set of doors. Colin Sloan is in. He was Robert's junior partner. I'll let him know you're here. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from a man who looked like the years had finally caught up with him. Colin used to be all sharp edges and courtroom confidence. Today he was softer, tired in the way only honest lawyers get. But when I handed over the folder and pointed to the clause on page 8, a flicker of the old sharpness returned to his eyes. Robert drafted this? He asked, eyebrows rising. He did, I said. I didn't fully understand it at the time. But I think it might matter now. He scanned the paragraph, tapping the page with one long finger. Oh, it matters, he said quietly. This is good work. I leaned in. So it's valid? He nodded. More than valid. It's airtight. This clause essentially grants you operational protection from termination without executive countersignature. The language is binding, very old school, strategic even. Your uncle had a thing for these poison pill provisions. He used them like chess pieces. My breath hitched. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. So the termination email I received, without the CEO's signature, it's invalid? Absolutely, he said. They can't legally remove you without Daniel's formal sign-off. Even an interim manager can't override this clause. That's what makes it brilliant. Most people don't see it coming until it's too late. I sat back, feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Control, not full, not yet, but enough to steady the ground beneath me. Colin looked up, his expression more curious now. Who tried to terminate you? A secretary, I said flatly. Acting like she owns the building. He snorted. I've seen it before. Some people mistake access for authority. But if she acted without board or CEO approval, and this clause holds, which it does, you've got leverage. Not just reinstatement level leverage. We're talking PR storm, wrongful dismissal, even breach of contract damages, if you wanted to push it. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wasn't here for revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. What would Robert do? I asked softly, not even sure why. Colin's mouth pulled into a half smile. He'd walk in calmly, drop a copy of the clause on the boardroom table, and ask them to reconsider, very politely, and then he'd let them connect the dots. That's how your uncle worked. Never dramatic, just undeniable. I nodded slowly. That was the path. Not fire, not fury. Strategy. Colin stood, offered his hand. Whatever you decide, Rachel, this was smart, bringing this in. You're not as alone as you think. I thanked him and stepped back into the hall, the air suddenly lighter. The faint smell of toner and lemon cleaner didn't bother me this time. I had what I needed. The contract was my armor. The clause was my sword. And as I stepped into the sunlight outside, one thought echoed steady and clear. They think they wrote me out, but I still hold the pen. I drafted the email with the same focus I once used to build department workflows and budget frameworks. Quiet, surgical precision. Subject line: Reinstatement request per Section 4. 2B. Contractual review required. I kept it formal, crisp. No passive aggression, no grand declarations, just the facts. I attached a PDF of my original employment agreement, highlighted the clause, and included the page number like I was prepping an exhibit for court. Then I CC'd 2 additional recipients: Elaine Torres, head of the Press and Communications Department; Lydia Fenner, an editor for the HR Loop, a niche blog popular among compliance officers and board recruiters. I didn't hit send right away. I read it again. Then once more. At the bottom, I added one line, simple but loaded. Please advise on who authorized the breach of protocol in Daniel Mercer's absence. Then I pressed send. It was done. I stared at the screen, heart pounding not from fear anymore, but anticipation. Let them come. I made tea. I paced. I pretended to work on my resume for 15 minutes, but my focus was elsewhere. I checked my phone. Nothing. No replies. No alerts. But then, at 3:12 p.m., it started. Not from HR. From the internet. I don't know how it leaked. Maybe someone from the board saw my name. Maybe Lydia forwarded it to her editorial team before fact-checking. Either way, by late afternoon, the HR Loop posted a brief write-up. Terminated while the CEO vacations? A director's contract clause might just flip the script. They didn't name me, not directly, but they quoted the clause, paraphrased my closing sentence. Referred to me as a quietly respected operations lead with 3 years of tenure and no prior disciplinary history. That's all it took. By 4 o'clock, the thread hit Reddit's r/work reform. It blew up. Can we talk about the woman who just flipped the boardroom on its head using her own contract? Whoever wrote that clause deserves a medal. Never underestimate someone quiet with a good lawyer uncle. The company name wasn't included yet, but internally, word spread like wildfire. By 4:30, I got a text from Greg in Analytics. Your contract is trending. Erica looks like she swallowed a lemon. I smiled for the first time all day. Not because I was gloating, okay, maybe a little, but because someone finally saw what happened. The silence of dismissal was cracking open. 10 minutes later, a LinkedIn message popped up. If you're open to talking, we'd love to feature your story in our next piece on HR policy protections. Anonymity guaranteed. I didn't reply. Not yet. I wasn't finished playing my move. At 5:11, I received a reply from the company's general board inbox. Short. Tense. We've received your message and supporting documents. This will be reviewed. You are not to return to the office until further notice. No apology, no acknowledgement, but they weren't ignoring me anymore. I refreshed the HR Loop. The post now had 800 comments. And the best part? That night, while I was folding laundry and half watching a baking show, my phone buzzed again. It was Greg. Erica just saw the post. Her face? Priceless. Looked like someone canceled her promotion mid-sentence. I didn't need to reply, just let that image simmer. The tides were shifting, not all the way, but enough to smell salt in the air. She wanted me gone. Forgotten. folded into the endless files of quietly removed employees no one questions. Instead, now they were talking, not about her, about me. The call came just past noon the next day. I was slicing an overripe peach in my kitchen, hands sticky, the HR blog still open on my laptop across the room. When I saw Daniel Mercer's name flash across my phone, I paused mid-cut, wiped my fingers, and let it ring twice before answering. "Rachel," he said in that breezy tone of his, like we were catching up after lunch. "Hey, I'm getting some odd emails. Everything okay?" I could hear waves in the background, clinking glasses, laughter. He was still in Santorini, still tanned, still detached. "I was terminated, Daniel," I said, keeping my voice even. "While you were off-grid, without a meeting, without protocol, and in violation of the clause you co-signed." A pause. "Ah," he said. "Yeah, I skimmed something about that. Erica mentioned there was confusion around project timelines. Or, what was it? Communication gaps? Is that what she told you?" I asked, pressing the speakerphone button and pacing to the window. "Because I have emails, receipts, performance logs. My department was ahead of schedule." He let out a low whistle, like I just overreacted to a parking ticket. "Look, I'm not in the weeds right now. I'll have legal look into it when I'm back. No need to escalate. We can smooth this over." Smooth this over. Like I'd hit a pothole instead of being thrown under a bus. I walked slowly to my desk, sat down, and pulled the contract toward me. Not that I needed to read it. I already knew it by heart. It's not about escalation, Daniel. It's about facts. My termination was unauthorized. That clause is still active. I've cited it publicly. That caught him. There was a beat of silence then. "Publicly? It's been discussed," I said lightly. "Not by me directly. But enough people are reading." A longer pause this time. I could almost hear the ice in his glass melting as his posture shifted from easygoing CEO to man assessing damage control. "Okay," he said slowly. "Well, I'll loop in the right people once I'm back. Just sit tight, Rachel. No sudden moves, all right?" "No sudden moves," I repeated, smiling slightly. "Got it." We said our goodbyes. He hung up, probably still assuming I'd wait quietly. He didn't realize that I was done waiting. 2 days passed before I heard from legal. The email was short. "Too short, Ms. Monroe. We would appreciate the opportunity to resolve this matter discreetly. Please let us know your availability for a confidential discussion. Greta Howell, Associate Counsel discreetly." That word always sounds so generous on paper. What it really means is, come quietly. Don't make us look bad. Let's fix this before someone important finds out. I stared at the message for a while, and then I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my old Twitter account, dormant since the early days of onboarding excitement, still bearing the awkward handle at OpsQueenRM. I never liked the spotlight, but sometimes a little light is exactly what the shadows hate most. I posted a single line. Funny how contracts get interesting around page 8, especially when executive signatures are missing. #KnowYourWorth, #CorporateClarity. I didn't tag anyone, I didn't name the company, just enough breadcrumbs. Within an hour, HR Twitter picked it up. By dinner, someone had screen capped the original HR Loop article and linked it to my post. It didn't take long for amateur sleuths to start digging, and then the speculation took off. This is textbook wrongful dismissal. Whose admin got cocky while the boss was sunbathing? Any bets on which tech company this is? Reddit spun faster than I could keep up. Threads split off. Posts went viral. Someone even created a fake Erica meme. Blazer, Bob, dagger eyes, captioned, "Terminate first, lawyer later." But the real win? My DMs were full. Not with pity, with support. Current employees, former employees, even a few board-adjacent consultants. Quiet, cautious messages, confirming what I suspected. You didn't deserve this. Erica's had it out for you since Q4 last year. Please keep pushing. You have people behind you. It didn't fix anything. Not yet. But it told me something important. The silence around my exit wasn't consensus. It was fear. Now, that fear was shifting. From me to them. It showed up in my inbox like a gift wrapped in petty bitterness. A screenshot, unrequested, unfiltered. From Jordan, a junior analyst I used to mentor. Sharp-eyed, always quiet in meetings, but attentive enough to know when something didn't sit right. His message was simple. Thought you should see this. I'm sorry. The image attached? A Slack message. Company channel. From Erica. Let's not romanticize Rachel's exit. She was emotionally unstable and, frankly, difficult to manage. Some people just aren't built for leadership. My jaw tightened as I reread the words. Emotionally unstable. It was the oldest trick in the book. When a woman pushes back, call her difficult. When she defends herself, call her unstable. When she refuses to go quietly, call her dramatic. But Erica had made one fatal error. She wrote it down. I didn't reply to Jordan. Not yet. Instead, I opened a new email, attached the screenshot, and addressed it to the director of DEI, Brenda Lawson. Smart, methodical, unflinching. She and I had served on the Employee Ethics Committee for 6 months. She didn't miss a thing. Subject line: Hostile language report. Slack message screenshot attached, no long explanation. Just context, timestamps, and a sentence that spoke volumes. Given the current public speculation and my contractual status, I trust this will be handled with urgency. Send. No hashtags, no tweets. Just the right spark in the right inbox. Within 10 minutes, Brenda responded. Thank you, Rachel. This message violates our internal code of conduct. We're initiating a formal review immediately. And there it was. The first official thread tugged loose. A few hours later, I received another email. This one from legal. Not Greta this time, but someone higher up, colder, crisper. We are aware of recent developments and are reviewing relevant statements for compliance breaches. Please refrain from further public disclosures while this matter is under investigation. I closed my laptop. They wanted quiet, but silence had already broken. The official company email hit my inbox at 9:04 a.m. sharp, stamped with Daniel's digital signature and a subject line as dry as dust. Notice of administrative suspension. Pending review. My stomach dropped, but not from shock. From confirmation. He'd finally come back from his Grecian sunbath, and instead of calling, instead of even pretending to get the full story, he'd planted his flag. Right in Erica's corner. The email was sanitized to perfection, full of vague phrases and safe language. In light of recent public discourse and internal concerns, we are enacting a temporary suspension of duties for Rachel Monroe, effective immediately. This is not an admission of fault, but a measure to preserve internal cohesion. Internal cohesion. They made it sound like I was the one tearing things apart. Not the admin who staged a termination, not the CEO who vanished when the storm hit. Me, the one pointing to the clause they all signed and pretended not to read. I stared at the screen, unmoving. Not angry. Just quiet. It wasn't about fairness. I'd already learned that. It was about optics. Erica had gotten to him first. No doubt, with a carefully constructed narrative, something about online reputational risk and combative behavior. And Daniel, ever the diplomat, chose the path of least resistance. I was, in his eyes, expendable. The irony? He still didn't realize the clause made the suspension illegal too, without due process, without an internal investigation. All of this would come back to haunt him, but it still hurt. More than I expected, not because I lost faith in Daniel, because, for a brief second, I still hoped he'd pick truth. Instead, he chose convenience. I let the message sit for a while, let the betrayal simmer where it needed to, and then I did what I do best. I prepared. Because Erica wasn't the only one with a file cabinet full of secrets. I mailed the package 2 days before Daniel got back. Padded envelope. No return address. Just a nondescript flash drive and a cover letter typed in clean, steady language. To the members of the executive board, in the interest of transparency and in accordance with the operational oversight responsibilities outlined in our governance charter, please find attached a digital archive relevant to recent internal matters. The contents include documentation pertaining to financial inconsistencies, breach of fiduciary conduct, and internal communication irregularities involving senior administrative staff. Respectfully, Rachel Monroe. I didn't sign it with flair, didn't add commentary. The drive did the talking. Inside were 3 folders, each labeled like case exhibits. 1. Inconsistencies. A tidy collection of emails showing budget line tampering, petty cash dispersals with no approvals, and 3 separate expense reports from Erica, flagged as consulting reimbursements, all issued to the same private email account, one not connected to any vendor on file. 2. Suppression. Internal Slack transcripts, anonymous survey submissions buried in the quarterly morale reviews, and Erica's quiet efforts to downgrade certain employees' performance scores before raises were evaluated. 3. Signals, screenshots mostly, of messages from team leads trying to voice concerns, of emails redirected, of performance review notes amended by admin before being uploaded to HR files. I'd collected it all over the last 8 months. Not because I expected to need it, but because I learned the hard way that power doesn't ask for permission. It only respects proof. The morning after the board received the drive, I was officially placed on paid leave. Per my contract. They didn't frame it as a peace offering, just a necessary compliance step, but the shift was there. Subtle, satisfying. I'd gone from problem to liability, and liabilities get handled delicately. My inbox began to stir, not from legal or Erica, from the people who used to glance away when I walked down the hall. Quiet messages, brief but unmistakable. We're watching. About time someone said something. Please keep going. The kind of messages you whisper behind closed doors. The kind you don't send unless the tides are already shifting. Even Jordan, the analyst who'd sent me the Slack screenshot, forwarded a note he'd received from Brenda in DEI. Thank you for raising this concern. A full review has been initiated. You may be contacted as a witness. Your identity will remain protected. That told me everything I needed to know. It was moving now. Not fast, not loud, but deep. The kind of movement that rattles foundations before anyone above ground hears the creaking. Meanwhile, the HR blog post had become a kind of folk legend in compliance circles. The original thread now had thousands of likes and reposts. Someone even built a mock Rachel Claus template, downloadable, editable, customizable for anyone starting a new job. I didn't reply to any of it. Not yet. I didn't need applause. I needed the next step. So I waited, and watched, and let the silence work in my favor, for once. Because when institutions begin to panic, they don't run toward the loudest voice. They run toward the one with receipts. The subject line read, Internal Audit Notice, Scope of Inquiry, Financial Practices and Administrative Conduct. No greeting, no small talk. Just a formal announcement from the board's compliance liaison, stamped with urgency and thick with consequence. The audit had begun. Not the kind that slips by unnoticed. This one had teeth: third-party compliance officers, mandatory interviews, access logs pulled from IT. It was everything Erica would have feared, and everything I had quietly, patiently prepared for. I was officially placed on paid leave, per Section 6. 4 of my contract, the same clause my uncle had insisted on inserting for optics, he'd said. If they try to ice you out, At least they have to do it with a paycheck in your pocket. He'd thought of everything. I logged out of all work channels. Set my out-of-office reply with measured grace. Currently on administrative leave as part of a compliance review. Please direct urgent matters to interim ops management. It looked polite. It felt like a warning, and then the messages started rolling in, not public ones. These were whispers, DMs, encrypted texts, private emails routed through personal accounts, from marketing, from payroll, from people I'd barely spoken to beyond polite nods at quarterly mixers. We've noticed the numbers weren't lining up for a while now. We just didn't know who to talk to. I was told not to ask questions about the Q3 variance report. Glad someone finally did. I've been meaning to thank you for not letting them bury it. They weren't loud, but they were steady. Even Lisa from marketing, the one who once told me Erica was probably just under pressure, messaged late one night. I saw the audit team in the break room today. Erica looked rattled. Really rattled. I imagined it, her pacing, clipboard clenched, forced smile cracking at the edges. For years, she'd coasted on the silence of others, on the assumption that if she moved just under the radar, no one would stop her. But the radar had changed, and now it was tracking everything. I spent those days on leave doing more than watching. I built a tracker, notes, dates, timelines. I organized every email, every memo, every conversation I documented across the last 2 quarters. Not because I doubted myself, but because I wanted the full picture ready when the moment came. And it would. By the 3rd day, I received a message from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Harrison Dwyer, one of the senior board observers. Just wanted you to know, your documentation has raised serious concerns. There will be a formal statement issued soon. I can't say more yet, but well done. Those 2 words stopped me. Well done. It had been so long since anyone said that without a but at the end, without a request attached, without strings. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to exhale, not because it was over, but because the balance had shifted. I wasn't fighting to stay afloat anymore. Now I was watching the current carry others toward the reckoning I had already faced. And I wasn't afraid of what came next. The invite landed in my inbox at 7:01 a.m. all hands emergency meeting, 9 a.m./mandatory attendance, 2 hours notice, no agenda, no subject line fluff, just a time, a link, and the unmistakable weight of a company bracing itself for impact. I dressed carefully, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Navy blouse, sharp blazer, hair pulled back. Professional, deliberate. The kind of look that said, I was never broken, you just stopped paying attention. At 8:59, I clicked the link. Over 130 faces populated the screen, some with cameras on, others watching behind black tiles. The usual small talk was missing. No one joked. No one asked about weekend plans. The energy was tight, like a room holding its breath. Daniel appeared last, tanned, polished, measured. Thank you all for joining, he began. I'll be brief. His voice lacked its usual warmth. No curated charm, no friendly banter. Just a CEO walking a tightrope, aware the audience could snap at any moment. As many of you know, we've recently undertaken an internal audit regarding administrative procedures and financial oversight. He paused, glanced down at notes that probably weren't his. That review has revealed serious violations of protocol, particularly surrounding unauthorized financial disbursements, retaliatory conduct, and misrepresentation of internal decisions. A few heads turned. You could see people piecing it together. Daniel straightened. Effective immediately, Erica Fallon is no longer with the company. The silence wasn't shocked. It was satisfied. 1 or 2 eyes even darted toward my square on the screen. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just listened. She violated both ethical and procedural standards, Daniel continued. And I take full accountability for not recognizing the scope of her actions sooner. I wanted to ask him if that accountability would show up anywhere besides this meeting, but I said nothing. Not yet. Daniel took a slow breath. Rachel Monroe has been reinstated with full honors. I blinked. Not restored, not welcomed back, reinstated, like a court decree. And as of this morning, he added, she will be stepping into a new role, Internal Strategy Officer, reporting directly to the Executive Board. A beat, then. She'll also be receiving stock options as part of the settlement agreement we've reached. That word, settlement, hung in the air, just long enough for everyone to feel it. I could almost hear Erica's phantom protests in my mind. You're overreacting, she's unstable, she's not ready for senior leadership. Except now, there was no Erica, there was just me, holding the pen. Daniel cleared his throat. Rachel, if you'd like to say a few words. I leaned forward, clicked my mic on, and looked directly into the camera. Thank you, I said. My voice was calm. Clear. To those of you who reached out quietly, thank you. You reminded me that silence doesn't always mean complicity. Sometimes it means someone's waiting for the right moment. I paused. No drama, just truth. And to those still finding their voice, I hope this reminds you that you're allowed to stand your ground, even when they tell you it's not your place. I clicked mute again. I didn't need to say more. The message had already been delivered. When the meeting ended, I sat for a moment in the stillness of my apartment, letting it sink in. The arc of it all, how I'd gone from discarded to decisive. The notification bell dinged again, an internal memo from legal, copied to board members and department heads. Formal closure. My title updated in the org chart. My new access credentials already activated. It was real. I closed my laptop, stood, and walked to the window. Same view, different woman, and tomorrow morning, I'd walk back into that building, not as the girl they underestimated, but as the one who rewrote the rules they used to bury her.